This is the Patriots Drive podcast.
We are all Patriots.
Where we discuss, analyze, and answer questions to all things happening in the NFL and with our New England Patriots. Now, here's your host, Cole Kelly.
Let's go!
Welcome in to the 6th episode of the Patriots Drive podcast. Today we got a special guest joining us, GilletteNation on Instagram, also known as Ethan. How's it going?
Yep. It's going well. Training camp today, training camp for the last week and a half. So that's basically been how I've been spending my last 10 days. My sleep schedule has been pretty screwed up because of it, but we're managing. It's the summer, so living life.
Seems like it doesn't get much better than that. Pat's football every morning,
Exactly. It's football for the first time that I've been able to watch since in person since January 2019 or 2020, the 2019 season.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to go.
So we got a few different questions. Obviously, finally getting to talk about football a little bit. So I guess the main thing everybody wants to know about is how's the quarterback competition going? I've seen some reports, obviously, that Cam's been doing well. Mac had a tough day today, but kind of what have you seen from that, and which guy do you think has the best chance of starting the most amount of games this year? Yeah,
so I'm one of those guys that's, after drafting Mac, I just wanted to roll with Cam the entire year. I didn't really, unless things went completely down south. But I was under the impression that there's no need to rush Mac into any starting role just because you feel like Cam had a bad last season. Cam has more weapons around him, so I was just to preface this, that I was under the impression, at least from my opinion, that I want Cam to start the entire season. With that being said, Cam has exceeded expectations, at least my expectations. For this, Mac has looked fairly decent for a rookie. I mean, there's still a learning curve. He went 8 for 8 in 7v7s today. I know that. But when it came to the full speed 11v11s, first day in pads, he went 1 for 6 with an interception. That was terribly thrown, right at Jawan Bentley, straight in the middle of the field. Just there was no need for it. So there's still some rookie learning curves. I'd say right now Cam is the upper edge. I think it's ultimately going to come down to the preseason games if Jarrett Stidham gets healthy, which I don't think he will be anytime soon. But right now I'd say Cam is winning. I think he's going to need to string together a lot more consistent practices to officially get that starting role. But as of right now, I'd say Cam Newton's the starting quarterback for the team.
Which I think comes as no surprise to people. I don't think people realistically thought Bill Belichick was going to come in this season starting a rookie quarterback. I know people had hope after last year that how bad Cam Newton played that maybe we would be able to start a rookie quarterback and it would be a better situation. And I don't see how it happens. I was listening to a podcast today on Part of My Take. Peyton Manning was talking about it, and they were talking about how he had his record in his rookie season of most interceptions thrown. I think it was 28. Exactly, and he said nowadays you just don't see rookie quarterbacks play a full 16 game season to get 28 interceptions. And I agree with that. I mean, maybe Trevor Lawrence does this year, maybe Zach Wilson does, but who do they have? I think that a lot of Patriots Nation expected Cam to come in and at least start the first 3 to 4 games, unless, like you mentioned, it's a total crapshoot. 3 picks the first game, no control of the huddle. And I just don't see that with Cam. He's a great locker room guy. Everyone loves him. Great energy on the field. Seeing videos on Twitter of him jumping around just makes me smile too, even though I was a little down on him last year from his performance, but his personality-wise, he has this team on lock, in my opinion.
Exactly. He's one of, Tom was a fantastic locker room guy, right? Perfect leader for the young guys, but take off the field stuff or on the field stuff out of the picture. I think Cam Newton is the best quarterback for this team just because you got a bunch of guys who have experienced winning. Devin McCourty, Dante Hightower, Lawrence Guy, the other ones that I can't come to mind right now. But they've all experienced leadership, and I think having someone else's perspective on leadership, and Cam is an energetic guy. He interacts with fans. He's dancing with everyone, with Kendrick Bourne. It's it's like a fresh new offense sort of, and whether he performs well or not, I think he's not going to lose the guys' support in the locker room. And I think at this point in the stages of most Patriots careers, Matthew Slater, Devin McCourty, Dante Hightower, I think that's what you need to go, is you can't lose that support from the locker room.
And I think how different of a leader he is isn't necessarily a bad thing for this locker room. After losing a guy who was such a great leader in Tom, I mean, Cam leads in such a different way. Like you said, he's energetic. Mm-hmm. He's always dancing, always having fun at practice. And I think that kind of might make some of the older guys, some of the older veterans, I mean, that's something they haven't experienced necessarily because it's always been Tom. It's always been one way of leadership. So kind of switching things up. The offense is different. The team's different. It's a new era in Patriots football. I mean, we're going to have a young guy, Matt, coming in as well. But, I mean, Cam off the field and in the locker room as a leader, he's been phenomenal. I wish his on-field performance was the same as his off-field, but I mean, he said all the right things in interviews. He's been a great guy in the locker room. Even with Mac, just what we've seen so far in training camp, and when Mac makes mistakes or he's visibly frustrated with himself, you see Cam go over there and talk to him and try to settle him down, calm him down, and just always bouncing ideas off each other and just helping each other out. But kind of getting back to Cam, how much true improvement do you think you've seen, if any, from him last season to this year in training camp? Or do you think it's more of just added weapons around him with Aguilar, Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, Jonnu?
Well, I think you guys have to take my opinion with a grain of salt because it's different watching him up close. Whereas like at a lower speed competition, based off of watching him from afar on TV where he's going against full NFL speed, he certainly has looked good. His arm looks a lot stronger. He says he's fully healthy for the first time in quite some time. I'm not sure how much truth there is to that. But his arm definitely looks stronger. He looks better, but then again, he looks better in practice. So can he translate that onto the game field? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out in the preseason, but he certainly looks like an improved quarterback, and I'm sure the weapons are helping that.
Especially so early, I'm sure it's hard to tell.
That's my question is, a lot of guys, a lot of quarterbacks can throw the ball in 7-on-7 with no pads on. And I know today was one of the first days with full pads, so it could be totally different. But a lot of quarterbacks can step in there and throw the ball. I mean, they've been doing it pretty much their whole life, and they should be able to do it with no pressure in their face. How does Cam react when he has full guys coming at him that can tackle him, that can take him down, coming full speed and stuff? So that's my concern is how does this practice translate to the game field? We'll see in preseason when, it's full go and hopefully week 1 when he's ready. I want to see how it, goes from the practice field to the game field because last year we didn't really see the true Cam Newton, in my opinion. I think he was battling injuries, battling COVID, battling other things. So I want to see, if he really has had these improvements in game time situations.
Exactly. Like you can dot up Michael Jackson and D Virgin in practice all you want, but if that doesn't translate to you dotting up Marshawn Lattimore and Xavier Howard come weeks 1 and 3, it's not going to really matter. You can burn your teammates all you want, but at the end of the day, wins are wins and losses are losses, and that's the only thing that the fan base is going to care about.
And that was something he struggled with last year as well, was like his consistency. Like he would be up one week, down the next. So it was hard to tell. Like it was so frustrating because we would struggle against the Broncos. I mean, he had a horrible game, and then he played pretty solid in terrible weather against the Ravens. So it's like we beat the Ravens, who's a great team, but we lose to the Broncos, who's struggling. It was so up and down. So I guess trying to see at least the improved consistency in training camp, even though it is against not full speed. This is the only 1 day of pads, so I mean the DBs can't really even initiate much contact. But
exactly,
I guess just hopefully the consistency and within his mechanics and stuff. Has he looked any different in that sense, like from your eyes? Do you think?
Mechanics wise, I got a question about that today, and again, I wasn't really paying attention mechanics wise. I'm sure mechanics, they're going to be a little different based off of what I saw when he's not wearing pads compared to like the next few days when he wears pads. He does have like a weird throwing motion where he like heaves the ball instead of just like bringing it up and throwing it. He puts all his energy into it.
It looks
and
really
it's
forced.
like there's a lot of force that goes into it. There's a lot of force and a lot of torque within the elbow that goes into throwing that. And I don't even know if that's like healthy to sustain that for an entire season. But I haven't really noticed any like forceful throws. Like his arm looks stronger, but I haven't noticed like there's some plays. One play that comes to mind is the Demir Bird touchdown in Houston where he like launches it like full on like I haven't noticed that. So I don't know if his arm motion's getting more fluid, but he still does have like a clunky-ish form.
It almost looks like that in like that Demir Bird throw. It almost looks like that when he's throwing a 5-yard.
Exactly, yeah.
Like,
it's like
he
he's
has
putting
that
all
same-
his effort into a 5-yard route and a 60-yard bomb.
It just looks so weird. It just looks uncomfortable how he throws, especially with with his shoulder injury and stuff. You'd think that his mechanics he'd want to be focusing in on those and really making them consistent. But I guess I'm sure it's tough throwing one way.
I'm sure
for
it's
your whole
tough
life.
10 years into your career to try to change it now.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of the things that you've been impressed on with Mac Jones? I know a lot of people are praising his work ethic. Brian Hoyer's talking about how he's always texting him early in the morning, 6 a.m., been in the playbook a lot. Josh McDaniels always in his hip pocket, it seems, developing him because he is the future of the Patriots. So what have you seen that you've liked from Mac Jones so far?
Probably the number one thing that I've liked from Mac Jones is probably from an intellectual standpoint. Headed into the draft, I considered like I'm not a big college guy, so take this with a grain of salt, but I'd consider Justin Fields and Trey Lance to be more like physical type quarterbacks, like running the ball, more like physically built and gifted that way. And Mac Jones is more like Tom Brady when it comes to you're not physically gifted, but you can process defense as well. You can make the right read. You got the football IQ. And so that would probably be what I'm most impressed about. On a lot of drills, especially today, he made a lot of checkdowns. He made a lot of smart plays, identifying the Mike linebacker, identifying the weak side linebacker, doing like the alert, pointing to his helmet. Those are small things that some people might not notice. I noticed it, but that other than like the throws and stuff, like everyone will notice the throws, but some of the things that probably the coaching staff's going to be most impressed about and that I was impressed about was probably just how he can read a defense well. He can make a smart play. He if the pocket's collapsing, he bounces out and waits for something to open up. So it hasn't been something physical wise, like throwing the ball or running the ball, but it's been more of analyzing the Patriots defense so far and trying to make the right read based off of that.
One thing that was kind of discussed throughout the draft process and scouting different quarterbacks and trying to see who was best for the Patriots, one thing that was discussed was that Mac was kind of a statue and all this stuff, and then he ran a pretty decent 40, and I mean he looks pretty good in the pocket, or at least in college he looked pretty good in the pocket with his movement. He was decent on some rollouts. How is that athleticism translated during training camp, and how does he look athletic wise compared to a guy like Tom?
Oh, compared to Tom, he looks very athletic. Like Tom was an athletic guy. Like he could escape some pressure. He looks very athletic compared to Tom. What he doesn't look athletic is when he takes reps after Cam. Cam is a physical force going down the field, has defenders falling over him, and he can just like bully his way into the end zone. Mac cannot do that. So it's more of just pocket presence, evading pressure, scrambling out. There was a play, I don't think it was today, I think it was Monday, where I think linebackers came from the inside and he just rolled out, ran for like 3 yards and slid, which is the most Alabama thing that someone could do. Is just that's the most stereotypical football move for a pocket passer in a non-contact practice, is to roll out and slide after 3 yards. So, I mean, I've been impressed with like how he is physically and his athleticism, but it's nothing that's gonna to top the charts compared to where it is with Cam Newton.
So just a quick side note: Did you see that video of him? I don't remember who they were playing, but at Alabama, the video of him running, he ran like 5-10 yards for the first down and did like a jump slide, like he like dove and slid at the same time, and it just
that rings a bell. I'm
Oh
I'm
my
not a
God.
college guy, so I couldn't pull random college stuff out of my ass.
No.
But that does ring a bell. I did watch some Mac Jones stuff when we drafted him, and it was a weird looking slide.
Oh my God, it was so funny. I saw
Yeah.
I think Mac did an interview with Mark Sanchez, and Mark also talked to Mac's offensive coordinator, and he pulled up that video. Oh my God, it was so funny. It just was the most unathletic looking thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that kind of reminded me of something like something Tom would do or something like that. But I thought that was funny.
An unathletic white boy at quarterback for us. That's exactly what I want. You know, we had one for
Who
20.
would've known,
We had
right?
one for 20
Exactly.
years, right? might as well
Yeah.
replicate it. So,
Might as well continue to the tradition.
yeah, it worked for us for 20 years, so it's got to do it
It
again,
worked.
right?
Exactly.
So another thing, you know, there's a lot of new guys coming in this roster through free agency, through the draft. Or who are some other guys that have stood out in training camp so far? I know N'Keal Harry's kind of been a surprise. Maybe Jonnu Smith has been more impactful so far than Hunter Henry from things I'm hearing. Who are some of the new guys that have stood out to you?
Are you talking about like free agents that we brought in this year?
Yeah,
that
free
have
agents,
contributed?
Trent Brown could
Okay.
go in there, a trade, Christian Barmore, guys we drafted, just people that are new to the team this year.
Yeah. People that weren't here last season.
Yeah.
Okay. Hunter Henry started off pretty slow. He had a good day today. He caught a few touchdowns. Christian Barmore had his best day. He did get hurt a little bit. But someone that I've been very impressed with is Rayquan Mcmillan. Dante Hightower is not getting that many reps at middle linebacker. I don't know if that's just because of an age thing or a scheme thing, or if they're just trying to build him back in to the defense at full strength. But Rayquan Mcmillan has subbed in a lot with the starting middle linebacker role and has played like fantastic. Other than one like jump to offsides on defense, he has a pick six. He's getting some pressures both inside and outside. I mean, it's not the number one choice that people would say when you ask for the number one free agent that the Patriots brought in, but I'd say he's probably been the most impactful free agent that they've brought in so far that's helped them during camp.
Yeah,
So
and
what about a guy like? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add a comment. Like, people might not think that's impactful, but why wouldn't that be impactful? Because people are going to say, well, you know, we signed Matt Judon, we signed Hunter Henry, we signed Jonnu Smith. Well, we signed Rayquan Mcmillan for I don't even know how much. It's so minuscule. If we can replace
Exactly.
Dante Hightower with that contract, that money's going to be allocated somewhere else in the offseason. I think that, like you just mentioned, like that's a huge. We knew all these guys that we brought in on big contracts were going to do good. Like, we expected them to do good. When you hear of these guys like Rayquan Mcmillan, maybe a Godchu, one of these guys that are coming in for a little less money doing good, that's the Patriot way, where Belichick finds these guys for cheap, and he makes them starters, and he makes them great players in the system.
Exactly, yeah. That's like people were worried that we overpaid for possibly like this Hunter Henry after we had just signed Jonnu, or we overpaid for Aguilar based off of just the market value of receivers. But yeah, that's what he's been doing for a while now, is signing these mid-level guys that last out free agency until like mid-May. You bring them in on like cheap one-year deals as like camp body, prove it, and he's definitely proven it. He's definitely, I think, unless barring injury for him, I'd say I'd definitely give him a role on the team. I have my roster prediction from a few weeks ago. I had him cut before camp. Right now, I would 100% move him to making the roster right now.
Yeah.
How about a guy like Christian Wilkerson? What have you seen from him? And he's probably another guy that was kind of a fringe roster guy. Probably wasn't going to make the cut, but seems to be really showing up and fighting for his job this season. A guy who was on our practice squad a lot last year, participated in some of the LA off-season practices with some of the new
Pats
guys.
West.
Yeah, Pats West. Yeah, that was what I was looking for.
So me and my friends make jokes that we call him Devonta Adams Jr. because he looks exactly like him.
Yeah.
Number 17, dreads. He has probably been the first or second best receiver in camp so far. He's gotten he's been working with Justin Bethel and Matthew Slater in special teams. In the majority of the offensive install segment at the beginning of each practice, he is working with the starters, with Cam, with Mac. He's like getting more reps than Kendrick Bourne at some things. I don't know if that's going to translate into a roster spot. It all depends on how many receivers they want to keep on the team. I think it's ultimately it's like a Devin Ross situation from last year. Like he was a fan favorite going into the season, right? You had a great camp, but it's ultimately going to come down to the preseason games. And if you can contribute there, if you can contribute on special teams, it's probably going to be more impactful than someone that can't. Again, I think it's just going to come down to the games. And like we said with Cam, it's great when you're running against defenders that can't use their hands, but when you're going against game speed defenders, that's where you're going to either make it or break it.
And a guy like Isaiah Zuber, who was another guy kind of in that same boat as Wilkerson.
Yep.
If Christian can have more of a role on special teams, and he's like he said before, he wants to play on all 4 different roles in special teams. He wants to really be involved in that sense. So if he can learn from some of those guys, Slater, Bethel, and really carve out a nice role on special teams, that's only going to boost his chances of making the roster as a receiver as well.
That's 100% going to be something that Bill definitely wants. Whereas, like, again, let's say N'Keal Harry starts off the preseason games fairly slow, and Christian Wilkerson gets off to a hot start, scoring like 2-3 touchdowns. If you want to give your final roster spot to someone, I wouldn't be surprised if Bill chose Christian Wilkerson over N'Keal Harry just for the fact that of special teams, right? If you can get the same receiver production from 2 separate players, but one can block punts better than the other one, I'm pretty sure Bill Belichick's going to want the one that can block punts and contribute in more ways than one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another guy I was going to bring up that I was listening to that I was hearing about today when I was driving home on Patriots Unfiltered was Henry Anderson. And I know he didn't practice today, first day in pads due to an injury, but I heard that he's really been, exciting. And some of the guys on Patriots Unfiltered thought that he could work his way into the starting role. And I think that's exciting because the front 7 last year was horrendous. We got the ball pounded down our throat against San Francisco and multiple other games. And so
Miami.
to hear a guy like that is coming over from the Jets on a 2-year, $11 million deal that could hopefully contribute along, and I think that's a big thing too, is that we don't have to throw Christian Barmore right into 40 snaps, 50 snaps a game. We can rotate him with other guys on the defensive line, whether it's Henry Anderson, Godchu, Lawrence Guy, we have that 4-man rotation. So Henry Anderson's a guy that I've been hearing great things out of.
And something that I noticed, again, I've been to so many practices this summer. All of them are blending together, but I think it was yesterday. They started off one of their defensive things with a 2-5 front. And I think just with like the amount of outside linebackers / DNs that you have, like you got Uche that can play on the edge, you got Judon, Kyle Van Noy. I think the defensive front is going to look so much different than it did last year. You're not going to rely on those 3-point stance D linemen all the time and just have them getting worn out the entire drive and just getting them run down their throat. I think you're going to mix and match. I think you're going to have like a lot of just like 1 or 2 lineman schemes and have a lot more versatility on the edge. You can still have guys that can rush the passer but also drop back into coverage more on 3rd and longs. Like you said, Henry Anderson has looked good. Some other D linemen that have looked good. Christian Barmore. Ronnie Perkins had his best day today. Carl Davis and Nick Thurman have also looked good. Then again, those are some bubble guys, not going to blow your socks off. But again, it shows the improvement that the defensive line has made since last season.
Also, Chase Winovich isn't even back yet. You know what I mean?
He's not even back yet. Exactly.
Yeah, so that's just another piece that they're going to have at outside linebacker, a guy who can come in and rush the passer, be explosive on 3rd down. So that's what I'm just extremely excited this year is to see all the depth they have at that outside linebacker, edge position, and even defensive line, and just seeing how they mix and match those pieces in different situations throughout the game.
Yeah.
Another, position group that a lot of Patriots fans are worried about is the wide receiver position. N'Keal Harry requested a trade. He's been at camp hearing, mixed emotions, but mostly good things coming out of him. And a lot of people are going to have their concerns, obviously, like we talked about with Cam, is can he do it in a game situation? I think that he's had a good attitude even after requesting a trade, coming in and, proven, he might have a chip on his shoulder. He might want to improve his trade value if he does want out of New England, or he might be here to prove people wrong. So N'Keal Harry's another guy that I'm hearing good things out of, but I think the highlight of the receiver group's got to be Nelson Aguilar, right?
Yeah, Nelson, I'd probably say is the best receiver, followed by Wilkerson, and I'd say N'Keal and Jacoby Myers are tied for 3. N'Keal has looked fantastic, and this is probably the 3rd year in a row that I've said that coming out of training camp. And we all know how that has turned out in his first 2 years. He had some great catches today, like what we drafted him to. He was physical. He got up for the ball. He was aggressive. He was like agile in the air. He was jumping up and making these ridiculous toe tap catches. But yeah, Nelson Aguilar has probably been the standout guy. He's dropped 1 ball, I think, that comes to mind. I don't really think he's going to be dropping all the balls like he was in Philadelphia. But he certainly has one of those mid-level to deep receiving threats that can really help just open up the offense if you have like a nice ground game. And then you have Aguilar over the top. You get Myers under the middle. But yeah, he's gotten a bunch of catches. He's definitely the fastest out of all the receivers in the wide receiver drills. And some people said we overpaid for him compared to some of the other receivers that were going somewhere. That may have been true when it comes to money, but at the end of the day, he's doing good. So you can't complain with the production point if we're paying him whatever we're paying him.
Especially if you have a specific role in mind that we need this guy who's got the speed, separation ability, something that we really lacked last season.
Exactly. And one thing that I noticed in Vegas is that he was very good at separating both the linebackers and the safeties to open up the middle of the field for Darren Waller. And I think that signing had a lot to do with the 2 signings of Smith and Henry. This Patriots offense is going to be dictated by the running game and using the tight ends in the middle of the field. And I think Aguilar split out wide can really set apart a defense that can open it up for Jonnu and Hunter Henry. So again, I don't think his stats are going to be out of this world, but I think he will definitely help open up the offense and take the top off of the defense.
Yeah, just a much upgraded version of Damiere Byrd. I mean, obviously, speed-wise, that's the similarity they have, but Aguilar's better with route running and separation and stuff like that. But having a guy who can take the top off of defense and have safeties really have to account for him, that helps the tight ends, especially Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, both good in different ways. So how much of what Aguilar has done so far do you think is actually him being good, and how much of it do you think is just noticing his talent compared to the struggles at wide receiver we've had in the past few seasons?
That's a good question. It's certainly like a breath of fresh air watching, like, I wouldn't say he's like an elite top 10 receiver, but compared to the receivers we've had in the last 2 years, it certainly looks like we're watching an elite top 10 receiver. So yeah, he's contributing well. I don't know if he's going to be this crazy all-pro receiver this year, but in comparison to the last 2 seasons, he's basically going to be an all-pro receiver for us. So all you need is just all you need is for Cam to stay healthy. Just give him the weapons. Now, if Cam can't play with these amount of weapons, I don't know where that's going to lead to for his career. But I'd say Aguilar has definitely been an improvement over the receivers for the past few seasons. But it's not like it's just he's playing mediocre and I'm comparing that to the last few seasons. He's still playing at a high level.
And he also mixed up Byron Jones and the Dolphins, which is also a plus.
Exactly. Yes, and that's the most important thing is just getting rid of the Dolphins and winning week 1, and because I cannot stand the Dolphins. So
yeah.
I don't remember the last time I went into a training camp with this much excitement of a deep threat. I'm sure there were guys that I knew about in New England, but I can't think of
Probably
the last.
Brandon Cooks, maybe.
Yeah,
Brandon Cooks was probably the most recent.
And that was what, 17? Yeah, probably it would have been 17,
yeah,
right?
So, like
So
4 years ago.
and
4 years ago.
I think Brandon Cooks did good things for us, but I don't think he was what we thought he was going to be. So I'm
especially
really
after one season we traded him away.
Yeah, he got knocked out in the Super Bowl, literally knocked out. But I know we've talked about this one before. But no, I can't remember thinking of that deep threat. We've always had Julian Edelman. We've always had N'Keal Harry guys that can go up and catch the ball. But I don't remember a legitimate dude that's been super effective outside of Randy Moss in this New England system that can just blow the top off of a defense at any time. And that's what you saw with Nelson Aguilar last year. Is he was just running past dudes, and Derek Carr was saying, you go get it. I might throw it 10 yards past you, but you're going to go get it. And when you're a safety sitting back there and you know that this guy can run past me, you talk about opening up the middle of the field, he's going to get deeper, quicker in his drops, and it's just going to open up that much more field space. So I totally agree with that that could have been a signing, not so much of we're going to use him a ton, is that our tight ends are going to benefit off of his speed. And although I think that we're going to use Nelson Aguilar in the deep game, it's going to be for multiple things. We know how much Josh McDaniels loves to get the running backs open on routes, the tight ends, whether Kendrick Bourne or Jacoby Myers in the slot running option routes, deep overs. He's going to create a lot of things.
Yeah.
Another thing, kind of on the front of stuff, a little bit of change of topic, on the front of Stephon Gilmore. I know we've seen him back a little bit, and he reported to camp, and he's rehabbing from that injury. But what's your level of concern with Gilmore? Do you think there's any real chance that he's not starting week 1?
My level of concern is probably 0 right now, and I will tell you why. I think Bill Belichick likes to play a lot of smoke screens with the media and what he likes to share and what he doesn't like to share. I'd say there are currently discussions going on with a contract extension, changing of whatever he's getting paid. I'm sure that's behind the scenes. And I'm sure the only reason he's on PUP is because of those contract negotiations, whereas if the media says, hey, Bill, why isn't Stephon Gilmore practicing? He won't say, oh, he's holding out. He's not showing up because he's not getting paid. He's not showing up because he is rehabbing from his injury. And I think that is a perfect get-out-of-jail-free card for Bill to not even acknowledge it. And they're like, okay, he's just rehabbing from his injury last season. And so no one needs to make a big deal out of it. I think once they figure out the negotiations on his contract, I think that's when they're going to take him off of PUP at a perfect timing, and everyone's going to be like, oh, look at that. But my concern is 0. I'd say if he was still like this heading into week 1, or if he was still on PUP, then I'd get concerned if he was still hurt or if these contract negotiations are going south. But I'd say as of right now, I'm not worried. I just think the PUP was just a thing, so he wouldn't get fined by the CBA, and they can just work out the negotiations as he tries to heal from last season.
I think it was funny, too, hearing Devin McCourty, I think, today say, I just can't wait for my guy Stephon Gilmore to be back and healthy so he can be out here in camp with us. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of guys. Cal Van Noy's been in a red shirt a lot of the times, and he's come back from injuries. We have a couple other guys that are being cautious, and I think that it's safe to say, you mentioned where Dante Hightower isn't playing. Those guys don't need too many reps in training camp. Yeah, you gotta. Especially with Hightower not playing last year, you got to get some of the rust off of him. But we don't need to go out there and play him every play and bang him up and have him, hurt by week 5 or 6 and where we can't use them. So Gilmore, Hightower, some of those veteran guys are dudes that I'm not too worried about that aren't practicing. And I think it's great that Rayquan Mcmillan's getting a chance, and he's proven to us what he can do, that some of these other cornerbacks are proving what they can do. We'll really find out if J.C. Jackson deserves cornerback 1 money next year, if we're going to let him walk. So it just opens up other competitions around the depth chart in those position groups specifically that I think is only going to make the team better in the long run.
Yeah.
So what's your thought on that cornerback position? Like J.C. Jackson, a lot of people have kind of discussed whether he is a cornerback one, and we kind of got to see that a little bit highlighted last season where he guarded Stephon Diggs. He kind of struggled a little bit against the Jets, but how much do you think this team will miss a guy like Gilmore if he, for some reason, doesn't play this season, or if he's gone next season and JC's that cornerback number one?
I mean, Stephon Gilmore, in my opinion, is a top 2 cornerback in the league. JC Jackson's probably top 10. So obviously he's not going to be as good as Stephon Gilmore. So the people that act like when Stephon Gilmore's out and JC Jackson replaces him and they expect the same level of production that they're getting from Stephon Gilmore are just insane. It's unrealistic that you're going to get that. I mean, I do think he's more of a ball hawking type corner. That's why he gets all his interceptions. That's why he does get flagged a lot too. He does need to work on a lot of man press coverage. I mean, sure, depending on this year, I think he's a good a good cornerback too. He could definitely be a good cornerback one, but I don't think he'll ever be that cornerback one if we have Stephon Gilmore on this team.
And that's a good problem to have. I mean, like you mentioned, JC Jackson could easily be a cornerback one for 85, if not more, % of the teams in the league. Maybe that's a little high, but that's a great problem to have. Is we have one of the top 3 corners in the league, and our other guy, led the league in interceptions last year. It's a great problem to have, and I hope, quite frankly, we never find out if J.C. Jackson can be cornerback one, because I'd love to keep both of them. I'd love to have Gilmore on one side and J.C. Jackson on the other side, locking their top 2 receivers down and doing whatever we do with the other guys. So I think it's a great problem to have, and people that want to just get rid of Gilmore because his contract situation he's holding out, I think that's stupid. This guy's got to get paid. We don't want to see him go anywhere else if we're Patriots fans.
Yeah,
and he deserves the money. I mean, he's getting severely underpaid. What, $7 million on the books for this year? That's ridiculous for a guy of his caliber. But are you concerned at all about kind of the cornerback depth in general? So I mean, we got 2 great outside corners with Gilmore and JC, and then one of the best slot corners in the league, Jonathan Jones. But after that, I mean, if anybody gets hurt or Gilmore holds out, or we lose somebody next year, it's Miles Bryant, it's guys like that. So, are you concerned at all with that depth that we have?
I mean, it's certainly we have a lot of depth when it comes to the safety position too, and you have guys that are versatile. You can have you got Duggar and Phillips that can play inside the box. You had Miles Bryant, D'Angelo Ross, who in camp have played both corner and safety. Jalen Mills right now is the starting corner across from J.C. Jackson. So depending on if something is worrying about Stephon Gilmore, I think Jalen Mills would slide into that starting cornerback role. I mean, sure, whenever you lose one of your best players, of course there's going to be concerns with the depth. I would say that the Patriots are well suited in the secondary to, if someone was to go down, I don't think it would be that much of a concern. They have a good enough secondary to, if one player goes down, say even 2 players go down, it's not going to be at a higher level that we thought it was going to be entering the season, but it's not going to be as bad as some of the other teams in the league.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And we're kind of more well-suited in the secondary, I think, at that safety position. We got a guy and another guy, Adrian Phillips, who seemed to be performing really well. He did great last season, and apparently he's been, from all the reports I've seen, he's been locking up the tight ends, our 2 tight ends in camp, which is exciting in one sense, but also a little bit disappointing when you look at the 2 guys we signed are getting locked up by Phillips. But so I think we have great depth in the secondary in general, but I think just at that cornerback position is the only thing I'm a little bit concerned about if we end up losing a guy or somebody gets hurt, because a guy like Jalen Mills kind of struggled a little bit with Philadelphia when he did play cornerback, so he's kind of more suited for that safety role. But how have some of the second-year guys looked? Who's impressed you the most out of guys like Duggar, Uche, and that group?
So, off the top of my head, my first second-year guy that's impressed me is Christian Wilkerson, but we've already hit on that. But out of the guys that we drafted last year, I'd probably say Duggar. He was my, I think, defensive practice player of the day a few days ago. He had a bunch of pass breakups. He did look iffy in coverage when it came to covering receivers, But then again, he's more of a bigger guy. He's more of stopping the run, going up for the ball. I wouldn't expect him to handle trying to run next to Nelson Aguilar on a deep post. But I'd say Kyle Duggar, who already said last year was under average for him. So if last year was under average, I don't even know what this year is going to be. Michael Onwenu said that
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, he graded his rookie season a C.
Yeah, wow.
Which means if that was a C, he might. I don't want to be too early on this, but Michael Onwenu might just be the greatest offensive lineman in NFL history.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that. That was a C.
If last year was a C, where he was like possibly an All-Pro as a rookie, he might just be the greatest offensive lineman of all time. I'm just putting that out there. He might just be the greatest offensive lineman in the history of the sport.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. Like, that's just got to be an extremely tough grade on himself because, I mean, if there's no possible way that was a C season from him, because that would mean he's the best offensive lineman in the game right now, no question. Like, if that was actually a C season. So, yeah.
If that was a C season, he might just be the greatest football player of all time.
Yeah,
I think he might just be better than Brady.
I could totally see Bill Belichick sitting Onwenu down at the end of the year and being like, hey, that was a great year. I'm going to grade you a C because I think all of our rookies can get better. He could be getting that from Bill, knowing what Bill would say. He
right? He personally thinks it's like an A, but Bill sits him down. He's like, bro,
that was a C.
Your season was terrible.
You can always get better. Come on, dude.
Maybe even a D.
Yeah.
No,
you're lucky. That's a
generous
grade. Yeah.
Yeah.
A C is a generous grade.
Yeah, that could be a Bill Belichick grade right there.
Yeah.
So if that was a C, then he's the best 6th-round pick from Michigan we've ever had. So
yeah,
exactly.
That's what I got to say about that.
Whoa.
We'll kind of wrap it up here a little bit with kind of your predictions on Mac Jones in general. I'm sure this is kind of what everybody wants to know, and the big question. A lot of people say quarterback competition, who's going to start week 1, but it kind of seems like that even early on. I know it's still early, but it kind of seems like that's even wrapped up already to where Cam's probably going to be the guy week 1 as long as he stays healthy. But when do you see Mac starting his first game, if you had to predict it now? And then I know we kind of talked about already that you'd like to see him sit out the whole year, but when do you see him starting his first game? Not including preseason.
Not including preseason. I'd say in a perfect world, when it comes to my opinion, I'd want Mac to, unless Cam wins the Super Bowl this year, I want Mac to start week 1 of next season. Throw him into the water. Like, do what they do with Patrick Mahomes, right? You have him sit a year, throw him into the fire. Whether he's good, whether Mac Jones is terrible next year, he's your guy. Roll with him for however long he's your quarterback for. Unless Cam gets hurt, I don't, or like he plays like atrocious, like borderline, I want to turn my TV off then I think that's when they'll start going to Mac. I think the earliest he goes in is probably week 5, week 6. I don't think he's going to get his first career start against the Buccaneers because that would be absolute mind-boggling.
That would be pretty. Cool.
I think it would be pretty cool. But I do think that like the schedule gets weaker after week 4. We have Houston, Dallas, Jets, Chargers, Panthers. That is a favorable schedule, although I'd love to see Cam go against the Panthers. But if Cam was to do terrible in the first 4 weeks, that would be a very favorable schedule for a rookie to make his debut. Unless unless you've already wrapped up a division, whatever, or you've already been out of playoff contention, then he maybe starts week 17 and 18 against Jaguars and the Dolphins in, games. But I mean, if it was up to me, I don't want Mac to start unless it's like you've already wrapped up postseason, whatever, or if Cam gets hurt. But I personally don't want to see Mac this year, and that's nothing against Mac. I just think it would be possibly better for his development if you just let him learn behind Cam, learn behind Brian Hoyer for a year, and just give him that year to get adjusted to the NFL atmosphere instead of throwing him into the fire just because you don't like how Cam Newton performed last year.
And it's kind of a mixed bag when you go to starting a rookie quarterback. You got a guy like Tua who didn't start till halfway through the season, but even that seemed to be too early. I mean, he had his struggles. He had his games where he did well, but he was kind of up and down, and to the point where one game, against the Raiders, I think, they had to take him out and put Ryan Fitzpatrick in for the fourth quarter. So that's got to kind of hurt the confidence of a rookie, and especially somebody being so young with not a lot of experience. I'd prefer Mac to not kind of go through that same scenario, but also you got a guy like Justin Herbert who was thrown into the fire, and I mean, he did phenomenal. He performed really, really great. So it's tough to see, but I think one thing with Mac especially is I think a lot of his success occurred at Alabama because he was there for a full 3-4 years before he started. So, I mean, he really got to understand the system, the different wide receivers, what he was supposed to do on each play. So I agree with you there that him sitting the whole year, or him sitting at least a good chunk of it, as long as Cam plays well, is going to be best for his development in the future, and not throwing him in the fire too early where it hurts his confidence for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
For me, if we hit our bye week 14 with a losing record, I mean, I don't care if it's 6-7 because it's on week 14. Just start Mac the last 4 games. Let him get the kinks out. You know, he'll play the Colts, which has a pretty good defense, Buffalo, Jacksonville, and Miami. Like, if we have a losing record by then, we probably won't be making the playoffs in the stacked AFC. I would say just get Matt going, get him some, experience. Indianapolis could be playing for a wild card spot. That might be a game that he would have struggles in, but I think it would be good struggles. And so I'm not afraid to see Mac Jones struggle if it's towards the end of the year and we're already out of the playoffs. Because he is our future, and I'd rather have him struggle now when we know we can't make the playoffs than weeks 1 through 5 in 2022 when he could eliminate us right from the playoffs the first 5 weeks. Yeah. So if we have a losing record by the bye week, I say put him in.
Yeah, that it's like you want to see him, but you don't want to see him
too early.
Like if he comes in and just absolutely shits the bed, then we're screwed for the entire year. I think you might as well just ride it with Cam, right? Just all the arguments last year was Cam didn't have any weapons. Cam had COVID. Well, now Cam doesn't have COVID, and now Cam has weapons. So now let's see what Cam can do, right? We just re-signed Cam. If they didn't think Cam would be somewhat better than last year, they wouldn't have brought him back. So they brought him back. Sure, I'd like to see Mac Jones play terrific in his NFL debut, but depending on where we are as a team come like week 14, I think it's best to, even if we're like 6-7, like what we were last year, like everyone was clamoring Bill to start Stidham, and he still didn't because he felt like Cam was the best chance to win. So it's Bill's gonna do whatever the hell he wants, and none of us have any idea what it is because he's a grumpy old man that won't talk to anybody. But I think if he believes that Mac Jones is gonna give them the best chance to win, then he'll start. But me personally, I don't think he's gonna give us the best chance to win. I don't think Cam Newton's gonna give us the best chance to win a Super Bowl this year anyway. But I think Cam Newton gives us a better chance to win more football games this year than Mac Jones does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think Bill probably, in a sense, is also thinking about Mac's development. I mean, he just took a first-round quarterback. He doesn't want him to flop. He wants to, if we lose 4 more games this year to have more success the next 10 years with Mac, then that it is what it is. So I think, so I think any of us would take that. I guess I just kind of want to get your thoughts on the Pats in general for this upcoming season. And I've seen so much hate on the Patriots and the different decisions they made in the offseason. Oh, they overpaid for Aguilar. They overpaid for Judon. They overpaid for this guy. They didn't need both tight ends. But when I look at it, I see a great offensive line, one of the best in the league. I see a great running game, especially with a guy like Cam Newton if he starts, a quarterback who's going to be a great piece in the run game, in the red zone, 4th and short, 3rd and short, whatever. Solid wide receivers, a guy who can take the top of a defense. Jacoby Myers, good in the slot, great route running. 2 tight ends, one's good after the catch, one's good against zone cover. You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot. I think all the pieces that we added fit certain roles, and it wasn't just money thrown away. You know what I mean? It's all went to certain positions of need, and they all have different roles that fit the scheme. Same with the defensive side of the ball, the defensive linemen. Our ability to rush the passer and stop the run last year was atrocious. So adding guys to do that, keeping our secondary intact, but I guess kind of what do you think? What are your record predictions, if you have any, for this upcoming season, and what do you think about kind of the level of disrespect that people are predicting? We're going to go 7-10 or 6-11.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about that?
Personally, for me, I hate doing record predictions before the season starts because you have no idea who's going to get hurt. You have no idea whatever, because you're basing this all off of the names on the paper without even seeing them play in a game situation. So I'd say right now, we'd be in like the 9 to 10 to 11 win range, which would make us 11-6 after the new. The schedules are really screwing with my heads now. The new 9-8, it just looks weird. But to hit on your point of the money being spent, sure, people might say like you were throwing money away. You could have gotten better deals somewhere else, but all the big money contracts that we spent for people were at the positions that we struggled at the worst last year, right? Defensive line was bad. We got Godchow, we got Anderson, we got Christian Barmore in the draft. Tight ends, we got Jonnu and Hunter Henry. Quarterback, we re-signed Cam. The wide receivers, we got Kendrick Bourne, Aguilar, and then we also drafted Mac. Like you brought in guys at positions of need. So, I mean, sure, some people might be like, oh, you spent way too much money for a Nelson Aguilar when you could have gotten 2 other mid-level receivers at a cheaper deal. But you went out and got guys that you felt like could contribute at positions that you felt like didn't contribute last season. I'd say we're at like the 9 to 11 win range. I think we're going to win a game or two that we shouldn't win, and we're going to probably lose a game that we should probably win. No, I don't think this team's going to win 15 games, but I also don't think this team's going to only win like 6. Yeah. I think it's going to be a winning season for us. I don't know if it's going to get us into a playoff. It's definitely going to be a wild card thing. I still think Buffalo's going to win the division this year. But I think it's going to be like a 9-8, 10-7 in the mix for a wild card with, say, Cleveland, Baltimore, Indianapolis. Around that, it's going to come down to late in the season, but I'd say the Patriots aren't as bad as the mainstream media is pointing them out as painting them out to be.
And it was a lot of money spent in the offseason, but at least you can envision a role for each of these guys, even if it was a little bit of an overpay. They each have their own role, and so far it doesn't look like any of the puzzle pieces don't fit. It looks like they all have their specific spot, their niche, what they're going to do well for this team, and how they're going to lead this team to success.
Right. People may be freaking out that we spent way too much money for Nelson Aguilar and Matt Judon, but they would have been freaking out even more if we just didn't spend all the money we had in cap space and you went and got like smaller level guys and saved like $40 million in cap space. It's better, and I think it fired the team up, and it probably was like fired the players up too, that on the first day of free agency you spend like $60 million to go get like 5 different players, and it just doesn't stop, and everyone's losing their mind. And that probably fired this team up, that they're willing to go out and get us weapons and make us better for next season.
Yeah. Dollar Bill earned his nickname first day of free agency this year.
First day.
For sure.
Yeah. No, it's got to be just exciting for the team in general, acquiring all those different people, and especially after the season last year, I think that just brings excitement into the locker room and for this new upcoming season and all the different pieces that we'll have. But I think that about wraps it up. You got anything else, Chase?
No, I agree. I mean, we'll get in more into roster updates and projections when we get closer to the season, but I totally agree with what you said. You know, people disrespecting the Patriots, putting 6 wins on them. I think our over-under is 9.5, or it might be 9. I think that's about right, but if I had to bet an over, I totally would. I think 10, 11 wins is possible. 12 wins might be the ceiling. But I'm excited for this year. I'm excited for the week 1 of training camp, all the reports. Hopefully we get guys healthy. Hopefully guys just continue to get better, but I'm excited. So
yeah. No, I'm super excited. This was fun. We'll definitely have to do it again. Huge thank you to you for coming on, but,
glad to be here.
Yeah. So thank you guys for tuning in again to another episode, Patriots Drive podcast. We will, be back with another episode later in the week or early next week probably. But yeah, huge shout out again to Ethan for hopping on, and we'll have to do this again soon.
Will do. Yeah.
For sure. We'll see you guys later.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Patriots Drive podcast. Follow us on social media to stay up to date with all things New England Patriots. Make sure you tune in to the next episode. And check out PatriotsDrive.com for more great content.
We're on to Cincinnati.